Good morning, afternoon, and evening to our listeners, and welcome to In 12D. We're season 4, episode 42. And in the studio with me, my co host, Susie Vaughn. Susie, welcome.
Hey Ramsey, how are you doing? I'm so excited about this episode 42. It's been a few months in the making, and I'm a bit beside myself, so I have to try and contain it. But it gives me great pleasure to introduce the author of a really acclaimed book that I have been reading, rereading, highlighting, taking notes from for the last couple of years. As everybody knows, I've been doing a lot of work on lucid dreaming and dream yoga. But in the studio today, we have none other than Robert Waggoner, who is the author of the acclaimed book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, which is now in its 16th printing. And he also co-authored Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple with Caroline McCready. This is the Bible for lucid dreaming, you know what I mean? And honestly, I kind of bow to you, Robert, because Robert has now 50 years behind him in exploring lucid dreaming and beyond all of that. Like, it's lucid dreaming is just a small pinch of what he's really getting into nowadays. But warm welcome to you, Robert. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And Robert, like, you know what we do, we're real people, we're having real chats in real time over here, and we just want to dive straight in. Like, I know you were saying to us earlier that I think you were 10 or 11 when you had your first sort of spontaneous lucid dream when as a kid, and then went on to have a lot of other experiences as you went through junior high school and things like that. Do you want to just kick us off with your kind of early experiences?
Yeah, the very first one, so I was probably 10 or 11. I found myself in the public library in my hometown, and I'm looking at books. And suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I see a little baby Tyrannosaurus Rex walking through the book stacks. And I sat there and I thought, well, wait a second, dinosaurs are extinct. How can this be? And then it occurred to me, oh, this must be a dream. I'm dreaming this. And then I thought, well, boy, if this is a dream, then I can tell myself to wake up. I told myself to wake up, and I immediately woke up. And so that was my very first lucid dream. So I realized within the dream, wait a second, this has to be a dream. This is too interesting. At that time, I didn't know all the amazing things you could do. So it was probably 6, 7 years later, I taught myself how to consciously induce lucid dreams.
So did you go back to the library to find a couple of books on dreaming? Did you come across, is that how you got into it in more detail?
Yeah. Well, what happened about 7 years later, I was in high school by then, and one of my brothers had come home from the university and given me this book, Journey to Ixtlan by Carlos Castaneda. And so Carlos Castaneda was a UCLA graduate student studying anthropology, and he was interacting with a shaman who was supposedly going to teach him about psychoactive substances like peyote and everything. But in this book, he's teaching him everything but that, and all about the nature of perception and all sorts of things. In there, the teacher, Don Juan, tells Carlos that he should find his hands in the dream state and realize he's dreaming. And so I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking, well, where's the technique? I don't get it. You know, how do you do that? And so I knew about the power of suggestion. So what I did each night before I went to sleep, for 5 minutes, I'd look at the palm of my hands while telling myself, tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. And I'd make that my intent, fall asleep. Each time I woke up, I'd think, boy, did I see my hands? On the third night of doing this technique, I'm walking through my high school hallway, and suddenly my hands pop right in front of my face. And I go, oh my goodness, this is a dream. And those football player guys, they're dream figures. And I reached over and touched a nearby wall, and it felt cool and nubby, just like you would expect it to. But I knew I was within a dream. And I went on and just had an amazing lucid dream. And after that, I was totally hooked.
It's like a gateway drug.
It's an extraordinary feeling when you realize that, wow, this is a creation. I'm within a mental creation, and I'm helping to create it in that moment. It's really a powerful experience.
I have a quick question. You said you basically create your lucid dream in the wake state. Is there a technique to do that, or it's just like I want to be a Superman and I go to sleep and I fly around, or there's more to it?
Well, so what I was doing by having that technique of looking at my hands was just having a signal to prompt my awareness. I needed something because in most dreams we just move through the dream. We assume it's real while we're in the dream, but we just go along with whatever's going on. But I need a signal to make me snap out of that kind of entrancement and realize, oh, this is a dream and all. So that's what I did. Once you become aware, then you can begin to make decisions. What do I want to do? Do I want to talk to that dream figure? Do I want to fly up to the top of the roof? What do I want to do? So once you achieve lucidity, that's when you're open to all sorts of possibilities, especially if you know how to approach them.
And I suppose the more you practice, and you can kind of keep thinking, okay, next time I'm going to ask this, or next time I'll try this, or you're kind of building a repertoire, I suppose, or a sort of kind of a library of experience, if you might say it that way.
Right. And one of the kind of pitfalls I'd say for early lucid dreamers is exactly how much fun it is. You can fly through walls, you can walk on water, you can dance on the ceiling, you can do pretty much all sorts of wild and crazy things. And it's so fun that kind of gets you hooked. But eventually I began to understand the principles of the dream state within lucid dreaming. And then I just kept exploring.
So yeah, we should get that in. Sorry, Ramsey, I know you were just going to come in. You finish your sentence, Ramsey, and then I'll come back in. Go ahead. Sorry.
Just a quick one. It sounds like Inception. I know I'm going into a movie style, but is it like for an average person when we're talking about it, would I look at it from that point of view, similar to that?
So Inception is a Hollywood version of lucid dreaming. It's like a friend of mine, Ed Kellogg, said that he'd had many hundreds of lucid dreams and never been involved in a gun battle or a car chase. So don't expect that kind of thing. But what you can do when you become lucid, you can begin to decide what you want to do. But again, some people just play, and you'll talk to some people who have hundreds, if not thousands, of lucid dreams, and they just do the same stuff over and over. So it took me a while to realize, in lucid dreams, you can access creativity. Like when I go through that wall, what am I going to discover? I don't create what's on the other side of the wall. Some deeper part of me creates what's on the other side of the wall. I saw how you could begin to use it for emotional healing, for physical healing. You could use it to engage in inner awareness. You could use it to perform spiritual practices. It took me a while, but I began to see lucid dreaming is an open platform from which you can explore a variety of things, just basically everything.
So just to give a background of, you have a psychology background, don't you, Robert?
Yeah. I graduated with summa cum laude with a degree in psychology, and that was one of the happy moments. In 1981, when I went into the library to escape the freezing cold and saw Psychology Today magazine. And that month they had an article by Stephen LaBerge about the scientific evidence for lucid dreaming. And I was so happy that someone had scientifically validated this, because people have been talking about it for thousands of years. But until the scientific validation came about, people weren't taking it very serious.
Because like with the Tibetan kind of the dream yoga background, like that tradition goes back thousands of years, but it was in a more monastic setting, and it was like it's only more recently that it's been kind of taught and shared in the West in a very kind of accessible way as well. So do you think it was Stephen LaBerge's book that started to, and maybe those kind of articles in Psychology Today that started to, people coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, I've had this experience, I've had that experience,
Yeah. Well, in many ways, he was kind of the father of scientific research into lucid dreaming. And his first book was very helpful for a lot of people. Of course, by the time his first book came out, I already had 8 years experience of lucid dreaming. And so, there were a lot of things that I was agreeing with in his book, and I was surprised by some things that I'd discovered that he hadn't included. But around that time in the mid 80s, like 1983, I joined a Lucid Dream Explorers group, and every month we had a goal to achieve. And so that was one thing that really helped me. Doing my own personal experiments for this group within Lucid Dreams really taught me, about the nature of personal experimentation within Lucid Dreams, and all that's involved in that. So that really helped me move along.
So so you're doing the experiments, you're in the group. Do you think that that's what sort of amplifies it too, that you're part of a collective, like that I think I know in some of the examples in your book, it's like you were meeting you would arrange to meet fellow explorers, wouldn't you, in the dream state, which I'm fascinated by. I've yet to try and figure out someone to do that with, but so do you think that's what kind of enhances or amplifies the experience when you're in that kind of collective?
Well, back in the 80s, and this is before the internet and all, we would type out our lucid dreams, photocopy them, send them to a person who would photocopy all of them, and then send them out to all the participants in the Lucid Dreaming Explorers group. So it was a whole different thing back then. It helps to have a community of folks, because sometimes they'll give you good ideas. They'll be exploring conceptual things that I'd never considered, like physical healing and lucid dreams. I don't think I ever would have thought about that, because I've always been, thankfully, so healthy. But other people have explored it and had success with it, and it really opened up my mind. So conceptually, some people are doing things that never would have occurred to me.
Yeah, that's the joy of sharing the experiences. But the other part I find challenging is remember the recall in the morning. You could have a very lucid night, but if the recall is a bit kind of sketchy in the morning, you've had an experience, but you may not be able to get it all. And do you have techniques for that, or do you just get better, or are you just consistently just putting even fragments down when you're recalling?
Right. So it does help to have good dream recall if you're going to go down the lucid dreaming path. And so here's what I do, because I'm married. I don't want to turn on a light and write down a dream and all that stuff. So what I do in the middle of the night, I wake up from a dream. The first thing I think is, what was I just dreaming? Because you can't go run off to the restroom or grab a glass of water or whatever. But by the time you return to your bed, you'll have forgotten what you just dreamt. So the first thing you have to think is, what was I just dreaming? And then when I recall the dream that I just woke from, I'll take my pen, and in the darkness, in the upper left-hand corner of my notepad, I'll put, a few things like cat, sinking ship, celebration or whatever. Then the next dream I'll put in my upper right corner, and the next dream I'll put in my lower left corner, and so on throughout the night. By seeing those words that I've written down in the middle of the night, then I can remember, oh yeah, I was on a ship, and there was this cat, and then there were more cats, and the ship capsized, and blah blah blah. And so that's how I did it. The other aspect, I'd say, if you're going to be on the lucid dreaming path, fall in love with dreaming. Just fall in love with it. I've had precognitive dreams, visitation dreams, and that means interacting with the deceased in dreams. I've had all sorts of just amazing regular dreams that have shown me a lot about myself, helped me understand my own symbolism within the dream state, and all. So if you fall in love with dreaming, then this isn't a big effort and a lot of work. But if you don't fall in love with it, then dream recall can be a difficult aspect.
Cool. Ramsey.
What do you mean by fall in love with it? Like, I dream, I have no problem with them. I used to write them down on my phone, and I forget about them. And a year later, I'm scrolling and I go, oh my God, I had this dream, and this happened. Ooh, it might relate to reality, but I was never able to sustain the lucid dreaming.
Right.
So did I not love it? I'm sorry. I just got.
Well, so it helps to find value in it, and if you finding value in it in itself is important, but there's the other aspect of it is just admiring the creativity, the creation of it, and also how it informs the day as well. So if you start to see that, even though I might not understand it, I might not get the symbolism, but still every night these creations are occurring. After a while, you just begin to admire the creativity of the unconscious mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sorry. You wanted to say something, Susie?
Well, I know that you work in business as well, Robert. So we were in our last episode, Ramsey and I, he's starting a business and he's developing at the moment. There's a lot of creativity happening. He's in a different stage now. And I was wondering, can you bring sort of business stuff in, like setting that intention? Maybe it's about kind of, I don't know, business development or marketing, or I don't know, creativity some way.
Right. One thing that I encourage people to do once they develop a little bit of dream recall is also get familiar with dream incubation. And so dream incubation is just setting an idea of what you intend to dream about that night. So technically you're not lucid, but I call it lucid light, like yogurt light, with half the calories and all. Because you're providing an intent to your unconscious mind and hoping that a dream will come forward. So one thing I encourage people to do, you got to make the intent very simple and direct. So you can't do an intention like, oh, tonight in my dreams, show me if I should go into the bakery business and how should I deal with my upset teenage daughter. That's going two different ways. And so, what do all the dreams mean? So just make it. But oftentimes too, I ask people, especially at the beginning, do this. Ask, tonight in my dream, show me one simple thing I could do to improve my health, to improve my business, to improve my relationship with, my angry coworker. So again, just tonight in my dream, show me one simple thing I could do to enhance the success of my business. And then that night, sometimes it's just very simple and you go, oh, I never thought about that. Yeah, I should contact my friend and tell him I have this podcast and blah, 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 and all. So again, you get a response. If you know how to interpret it, you'll probably do well. Yeah, with taking that advice.
I had a cool experience. Again, it's all about having an experiment with this, and having a bit of fun with it. So I really wanted to go to the dream yoga retreat when I was in America, but it was in the wrong state. We were going to be somewhere else. And so I couldn't see kind of how logistically I could make that happen unless I would really put everybody out. So, but I knew I really wanted to go. And my friend was just like, just go. And I was like, oh, I can't, because of the other plans that were made. So going to sleep, I was like, okay, if I'm supposed to go, if this is really for me, when I wake up, I really want to have a solid yes, kind of that it just is going to happen and know what should I do next for that. So went to sleep. I genuinely didn't remember anything in the dream. I just woke up. But I've been getting better at kind of drawing out the waking up state, the kind of coming from the dream. I can kind of hang out in there a little bit because I always meditate when I wake up in the morning. So I can slip right into meditation, sitting up in bed. And that's when the information came and it was really clear. It was just like, all you have to do is drop the link for that retreat into the group chat. No, and that was it. There was no other information, just that. And I was like, really? Will I? What? And I just thought, okay. And I dropped it in, and sure enough, the answer. I did end up there. In fact, the four of us all went together, and they changed all of the plans. But I was the only one whose been really into this and researching it and talking about it. It wasn't because the others were interested, but that's how it worked out, you know? So.
Right. And that's part of learning to fall in love with dreaming. When you can ask a question before you go to sleep and expect an answer. So sometimes I'll make it easy for people. I'll go, look, you know what a stoplight is. Red means stop. Orange means, you better get ready to stop. And green means go. And so tonight, if all you need is a yes, no answer, tonight in my dreams, if the answer is yes, show me a lot of green. And if the answer is no, show me a lot of red, like stop, don't do this. And a lot of people will wake up the next morning and, oh, last night I dreamt of these guys in red uniforms and they all got into a red truck and they went across a red highway and all. And then oh yeah, I wanted to dream about that issue. And obviously the answer is no if I'm seeing all that red. So again, there's ways of playing with it, but what it began to show me especially is that somewhere deep inside the unconscious, if you want to talk about it in those terms, the unconscious has kind of its own viewpoint and provides its own advice and suggestions for the waking self on how to proceed.
So that would be a really good segue. Ramsey, did you have something else you wanted to add?
No, actually, one of our listeners was saying is that she had a family issue going on, and then she dreamt about how it would resolve it, and it wasn't the best outcome, but at least it helped her not obsess over the fixing part of it,
Right.
So that actually, from what we talked before, is the awareness behind the dream that comes out and kind of guides you into where to move in your awakened state. I know you want to go into the second segment, but what is an awareness? What is that awareness behind the dream? Right.
So it was back around 1985. I was part of this Dream Explorers group. And one time, the monthly goal was find out what the dream figures in your lucid dream represent. And so I thought, oh, this will be easy. I can do this one. So I became lucid, followed a woman into an office. Now there's 3 women and a guy in a 3-piece suit. And I walk up to the older gentleman in the 3-piece suit, and I ask him, excuse me, what do you represent? And I expected him to respond, but instead a voice from above him boomed out a partial response. And so I looked up and I repeated what I'd heard in a questioning manner. And then it's like this non-visible voice had to boom out, had to think about it and give me the full response that would make sense. And so I thought, okay, I've completed this task. I'm going to wake up and write this down. In the morning, I thought, well, wait a second. Why didn't the dream figure just tell me mano a mano just directly? Why did this non-visible voice boom out a response? Is there an awareness behind the dream? And so after that, in my lucid dreams, I would ignore all the dream figures. I'd ignore the dream setting, and I'd just look up and I'd ask questions of the invisible unconscious mind. And incredibly, sometimes I'd hear responses. Sometimes the entire lucid dream would change to show me the response. I'd be in a whole new space or looking at something totally different. And then I thought, well, boy, how deep is this awareness? And so I would begin to ask to have conceptual experiences, like show me the energy of the universe and show me this, let me experience that. And darned if it didn't respond. And it really began to blow my mind that, oh, in a lucid dream, you can interact with basically what I would call your inner awareness, your inner self.
Wow. Like when you describe that, I want to know then, like after you wake up from it, as in wake out from sleep and get out of bed and go down and have your, whatever you're having in the morning, that must surely shift your whole state of consciousness because you've kind of, like, it's a heightened state. It's nothing that we're kind of, I suppose, trained for, or, like, how did you kind of bring that into your day, or how did it inform your day, let's say?
Well, so you begin to realize that normally in lucid dreaming, most people might have 2 or 3 or 4 lucid dreams a month. So it's not happening night after
Yeah.
night after night for a lot of people. It does happen that way for some people, but not a lot of people. Also, at first, just like everybody, you question, you test, you experiment, you doubt, you retest, and you try to understand what's going on here. So it takes a while, but after a while you realize there's something here. There's something here, and I was so happy when I read a piece that Carl Jung had written. He was trying to describe the 12 characteristics or something that an inner awareness might have, assuming someone could prove that an inner awareness existed. And I looked at that list, and then later I used it in my first book and showed that, here's examples of lucid dreams where there was judgment. Like once in a lucid dream, a friend of mine who was interested in modern physics and string theory, he announced that he wanted to experience, a multi-dimensional string, and the awareness behind the dream told him to return at a later time when he seemed ready for the incredible nature of the experience.
Wow.
And then it told him that he seemed too unfocused and distracted at that moment, and basically to come back when you're ready for that kind of thing. So again, sometimes when you ask a question of the awareness behind the dream, it refutes the premise of your question, and it'll come back with something else. Like a friend asked, show me the beginning and end of the universe. And the non-visible awareness says, the universe has no beginning and has no end. The universe is an everlasting cycle. So again, you're not dealing, it's just not an echo of your conscious ego self responding to you. You're in touch with the deeper level of the self. And all. So that's why, as you play around with it, it begins to get more amazing and more interesting. But to your point, Susie, sometimes in waking meditation, I'll reach the level of my inner awareness and can interact with it much like I do in a lucid dream.
Wow. So did you, as a result of all of the research and experiments and, exploring with your groups and everything, did you become more spiritual? Did it become part of your spiritual kind of belief system or practices? Did it expand what you thought of life?
So I'll tell you the funny thing that you wouldn't expect as you're going down the lucid dreaming path. What I began to see is that we all exist in our comfort zone. And when we get scared, we move away. And when we have limiting beliefs or binders, we just stay there in the comfort zone. And so I was realizing my lucid dreams were bringing up test cases for me to resolve fears so I could grow and resolve limiting beliefs so, I could grow. Like one thing I didn't explain in my first book is when I started having lucid dreaming frequently in my late teenage years, also I began to have what I now would call past life dreams, that I'd be looking through the eyes of another at something that was happening 4 centuries ago or 10 centuries back. And what my inner awareness was breaking me out of the Christian Protestant mode of one life, this is it, heaven and hell for eternity. That's what I grew up in. That was the cultural, spiritual view that I grew up in as a kid. And my inner awareness was showing me, you have lots of lives. This is not your first time at this rodeo. You've been here before. And so again, the lucid dreaming path, you have to, as you go on, you start breaking down fears, you start breaking down limiting beliefs, and you're able to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And the comfort zone keeps getting wider and wider and wider. So you just don't jump from, I'm lucid, and now, I'm having these big experiences. There's a lot of stuff you work through to get there.
Yeah. Because in the dream yoga practice, I was doing some of it this morning actually. There's like chakra clearing and, there's the different chants. It's very intentional. There's a kind of a sacredness to it, I suppose, is a way I would explain it. Like I find when I listen to the Rinpoche's chant, it really it kind of brings me into sort of coherence, I would say, into my heart. You're working on the heart, you're on the throat, the third eye, and then eventually getting to that other, what the Tibetans refer to as the secret chakra, which is representing fearlessness. So that was quite a new part for me when I was reading about it and practicing with it. And then I ended up having a dream where I was getting chased by a guy with a gun. We've no guns really over here. That doesn't happen in Ireland that much anyway. And so I'm getting chased by a guy with a gun. And I'm like in a movie reel, but we run out of film, and I'm after running off the screen. I'm running in kind of midair sort of thing. And with that, I wake up and I was just like I was really experiencing something, like I was petrified, but then because of everything I'd been learning, I just stayed in my fear. I really stayed in it and I allowed it. And I kind of went into more meditation, I think, is the middle of the night. And I sort of met it, and I met that part. It was really quite profound kind of what happened, because when I was kind of calm again, I went back in and I want to go back into that space,
Right.
Not running. And honestly, it shifted so much for me. When I woke up eventually that morning, I felt like I had been kind of injected with some kind of bliss bomb or something. I was just so happy to be alive, and
Right. Right. Oftentimes in a lucid dream, when you resolve a fear or you break through a limiting belief, the next day you wake up and you're supercharged for either the rest of the day or the rest of the week or whatever. Here's an example from the second book with Carolyn McCready, and this is one by Carolyn McCready. So I don't recommend people doing this, but this is what she did. She became lucidly aware. She looked up and she announced to her inner awareness, "Now show me my greatest fear." And suddenly, appearing in front of her is the Grim Reaper. He's there in full costume, and she freaks out. She freaks out and tells herself to wake up. And then she feels like she's woken up in bed, and she rolls over, and the Grim Reaper is laying by her in bed. And then this time she wakes up for good. Anyway, she said when she woke up in the morning, she realized that truly was a fear of hers. Here she is in her 30s or whatever, but she really had a fear of death. And so she went to the library, got books on, overcoming your fear of death and blah, blah, blah. A month later, she becomes lucid again, and she announces to her inner awareness, "Now show me my greatest fear." And once again, the Grim Reaper appeared. And this time, though, she embraced it, and accepted it, and understood that, this process of dying makes way for new life, and it's necessary, for this whole chain of existence. And she said, as soon as she embraced the Grim Reaper, she said it was like this incredible energetic transformation occurred. And when she woke up, she was on cloud nine. But after that, she no longer had a fear of death. So again, I'm not necessarily recommending this to any lucid dreamers out there to meet your greatest fear. But once you resolve a fear, then you reclaim all the energy that was caught up in that fear. And so sometimes you'll find lucid dreamers who are literally on kind of a high for like two weeks or something. I mean, that's how amazing it can be when you resolve this stuff.
Cool.
This is amazing. I know we're all sharing dreams, but just a quick one. I had a couple of them, and I don't usually get lucid dreams, but they do happen sporadically. One of them was, I guess I still had attachment. First of all, I come from Lebanon, and I lived in Canada, so there's that separation and the wanting of going back home per se. one night the dream was I went home to our old house, and I go, oh my God, it's not the same. It had changed, and there are people living there, which is weird, and like there's all these emotions that started to flow. And I woke up and I go, why am I dreaming all of this? It's nonsense. But I did write it down. That's why I still remember it. A year or so after that, it happened that I traveled out of the blue. I just got on a plane, went back home, talking to my cousin. She goes, you know what? Let's go back to your old neighborhood. I'll show you how, like, I said, oh, it'll be good. Like after 20 odd years, it's nice to see it. And I go, where did we live? Where's our home? She was just right over there. Everything has changed. There are people living there. But when I got there, the emotions that I was expecting to have were already gone in my dream. They were just released. And like you said, it gave way for other things to flourish rather than to sit and bathe in old emotions that are not required anymore.
Right. This can be so profound. Some of this emotional healing. Once I was giving workshops in Colombia, in Bogota, Colombia, and I remember the first time I went there. So here's this hotel auditorium, and it's full of people, and in the very front row is a woman who's probably 35, 40 years old, but she has all this pain in her face. I mean, sometimes you meet somebody and you can just see all the pain in her face. But this woman asks excellent lucid dreaming questions. So I knew she was already, quite far along in her lucid dreaming. Anyway, 6 months later, they had me come back to Bogota and give another workshop. And this woman walks through the door, looks totally changed. 80% of the pain is gone from her face. She looks taller, younger, more attractive, the whole thing. And I ran up to her and I said, what happened to you? And she said that conceptually, she had never thought about using lucid dreaming for healing, for emotional healing, until she heard me talk about it. And so in her next lucid dream, she did exactly what I told. I said, you got to figure out a plan in the waking state on how you're going to achieve your intent to heal emotionally, however that's being expressed in your life. So I said, make out a plan in the waking state of what you're going to do in the lucid dream. She became lucidly aware. She remembered her plan. She enacted her plan. She had this incredible ecstatic experience. And she said when she woke, she said the pain was gone. She said she could still remember the traumatic incidents, but now there's no pain associated with them. And so again, sometimes that's how incredible this state can be, is just like you're saying, is just the realization, the working through it, and now it changes the emotional realm such that now you're free. Now you're free. So it's truly amazing what can happen.
What's amazing with your technique is that you actually invoke that before you go to sleep, rather like in my case, that one instant, it just happened on its own. It was spontaneous kind of a healing, if you want to call it. Yeah.
Right. And you're right. Sometimes it happens spontaneously, but like let's imagine that there was someone who had a bad knee. They had a bad knee. If I was working with them, I'd say, look, when you become lucidly aware and remember you want to heal your bad knee, how are you going to do it? What are you going to do? Because a lot of times that's what happens. People, oh yeah, I want to heal my knee, but how do I do it? And they can't think of anything in that moment. So I'll bring up 5 or 6 different things. You might create a ball of healing light between your hands and put it on your hands. You might put all the healing energy into your dream hand and then put your dream hand into your bad knee and intend for it to be healed. There's all sorts of ideas that you can come up with to potentially heal the knee. But anyway, when you become lucid, that's what you have to do. You have to remember your goal, and then your plan to achieve that goal and go for it. But sometimes it's a little bit more complicated. Once a woman had out of control menstrual bleeding, and the doctor says, we're going to schedule you for a hysterectomy here in a week if this doesn't stop. And so she was a good lucid dreamer. So she became lucidly aware. She had a plan that she was going to put healing energy in her hand and then stick it into her uterus and heal it. But right as she was putting energy into her hand, her inner awareness told her, first heal your heart.
Wow.
And she had to heal her heart first, and then she went ahead with her plan and healed her uterus. And she woke up and the menstrual bleeding had stopped. And the doctor said, well, if there's no bleeding, then we're going to postpone any hysterectomy. And she's been fine ever since. But again, so sometimes there's an emotional wound behind the physical expression.
Well, that's interesting.
With recurring dreams, I know the Rinpoche was talking about recurring dreams, and like that they really are recurring because, you know, there's something that it's trying to get your attention, you know, something in your day-to-day life, or that or maybe in your mind, or kind of thought forms or belief systems, and it keeps coming back. You keep ending up in the same place or location or something like that. So have you any experience with that? Or
Yeah, you know, I had a funny one as a young kid. I kept dreaming that the invisible man was in the house. And when this first happened, it was kind of cool. Oh man, the invisible man's in the house. And where is he? Well, I don't know. He's invisible. And so they started to go on, but then it kind of got a little bit more sinister. Like, well, gosh, the invisible man's in the house. What if he's here to harm us? And so then I'd run into the kitchen and get all the knives and take him and try to hide him in the garage. But then here's what happened one night. So the recurring dream happened again. The invisible man was in the house, but I could hear that he was in one room. So I ran to the garage. I got a bucket of paint. I opened up the bucket of paint. I put it on top where the door sill was. And I knew as soon as that invisible man opened that door, the paint would fall on him and he would no longer be invisible. And after that dream, I no longer had that recurring dream. So I think what the recurring dream is asking us is for a new creative response to the situation. Yeah. Instead of fight or flight or whatever, it wants you to evoke a new response. And once you evoke the new response, then the recurring dream ceases. And so that's one of the beautiful things about lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming has been used to help people who have recurring nightmares from PTSD. And they'll teach the people to become lucidly aware. And if they become lucidly aware just once, change any little thing, then the recurring nightmares basically cease. And so for a lot of people with PTSD, the recurring nightmares are why they're taking alcohol or drugs to try to get some sleep, and they're trying to knock themselves out and all. And so, you know, this has been shown again and again in scientific research that becoming lucidly aware, sometimes even just learning about lucid dreaming resolves the recurring nightmares. So there's extraordinary potential in these practices.
It's phenomenal. Like, have you seen, in like 50 years is a long time, you know, exploring something. And so from those experiences where you were clearly home alone with the paint on the invisible man, sort of, you know, brilliant solution for that recurring kind of experience, to, you know, the real healing that can happen. Like, you know, that seems like really quite advanced. And I know you touched on lucid living, like bringing some of that creativity or creative response or visionary response to your waking state. You know, where is it now with you, Robert? Like, what's your kind of week like?
Well, so one thing that is important is lucid living, and that's the phrase my friends and I use when we see how the inner mind works, how it relies on your beliefs and expectations. So if I see somebody in a dark trench coat and think they look like a mobster, well, then they'll turn around and have a gun and a knife and want to rob me. If I see the same figure and think that they look like a priest, then they'll turn around and they got a crucifix and a Bible, and you know, they want to give me a blessing or whatever. So your beliefs and expectation matters, your focus and intent matters, all this matters. And here's how it helped me in waking life. I had a horrible hay fever every August, September. Throughout the year, I would dread August and September because my hay fever would be so bad. And I just never took any medicines for anything like that. So then one day I thought, well, gosh, I've just written this book on lucid dreaming, and and I've shown how all these people had healed themselves within lucid dream. I'm going to heal myself through lucid living. So this is what I did. Every time I began to think about hay fever or fear it, first I became mindfully aware of it. I noticed it was floating through my mind. Then the second thing, I would say, no, not anymore. Then the third thing, and this was important, I had to tell my mind where I wanted it to go. I would say, no, not anymore. From now on, I breathe easily and naturally.
Nice.
And so TV commercial, hay fever is coming, prepare yourself. I'd say, well, I'm aware. Nope, not anymore. From now on, I breathe easily and naturally. The first hay fever season, I had a 70% reduction in symptoms. The next one, 90% reduction in symptoms. The next one, 95%. Now I don't even think of hay fever. I just removed it from my thought process. I resolved the fear and the concern and the emotional aspects of it. And so I'm not saying that pollen doesn't exist and all that kind of stuff. I'm just saying I breathe easily and naturally.
And it's like, that's very reasonable, because not everybody suffers from hay fever during pollen season. You know what I mean? So it's not impossible. You know, at the same, like, you're not saying, I want to grow back my hand if you chopped off your hand in your dream. You know, it's very reasonable, like, isn't it?
Right. And you'll see people, other lucid dreamers, do this process to resolve their issue, whatever it is. But again, you don't have to be a lucid dreamer to use it. Notice your mind, observe your mind. When your mind is going through that fear mode, say, no, not anymore. But then you have to tell your mind where you want it to go. You know, from now on, I no longer have anxiety. I feel free and comfortable within myself. You know, if you're having panic attacks or whatever it is. That's what you begin to learn. And you see it in other lucid dreamers. They overcome phobias. They overcome anxiety disorders in their lucid dreams, just because they begin to observe how it is that the mind works at deep levels. And so in the waking state, they don't let their mind do those things that lead to a panic attack. They go, oh, if I follow that path, I'm going into a panic attack. Oh, I'm going to tell my mind something else. Okay, panic attack avoided. So it's amazing what lucid dreamers are beginning to use lucid living to change their waking life.
I love that. I love the phrase lucid living. I just feel that feels really good, doesn't it, Ramsey?
Oh, it does. It does. Now, do you take your lucid living into your lucid dreams, or it's just, how do you mix the two? It's kind of interesting. I just want to see if there's a special technique you use.
Well, what you begin to see is that every state of consciousness involves you, the observer, and your beliefs, expectation, focus, and intent. And so you start to begin to see that dreams, lucid dreams, even waking, are kind of mental phenomenon. And when you begin to understand, oh yeah, this is the mechanics of how it all works, then you can begin to play with it and really have some amazing experiences. So again, you think at first it's just all about lucid dreaming. And then what you begin to see is, oh, I'm learning about the nature of awareness, the nature of self, and how to work with this such that I can let go of fear, I can let go of limiting ideas, I can heal, I can do this, that, and the other. And once you see it in that way, you see it in really broad terms that whatever experience you're in, it's really about greater mindfulness and greater awareness.
It's just got a vision of basically life is continuous, and your body sleeps and sees it in one state, and your body wakes up and sees it in this, well, and it's a slightly different state, but the whole movie is continuing, and you can play around with it with whichever state that your body is in, and that's amazing. Oh my God, that was. Oh.
You know, there's some dream theorists who feel like dreaming occurs constantly, but our focus, our awareness dips into dreaming and calls it a dream when we wake up from it. But the dreaming is occurring constantly, you know, underneath the self, whatever the self is experiencing in that moment. The dreaming is occurring constantly.
Robert, do you think we have the same power, mightn't be the right word, but effect maybe, daydreaming as we do lucid dreaming?
I think some daydreams are actually connecting us with dreaming. That it's just not random. That sometimes it's connected, but some daydreaming I think is connecting us with inner states that we're just not aware of in the moment. Um, but one thing I would say about lucid dreaming, it begins, especially when you begin to interact with the awareness behind the dream, it changes your intuition during the day. Like sometimes you'll receive information and you'll think, well, wait a second, is that real? Where did that come from? And I just received it. And then later it comes to pass, or you learn the confirming aspects of it. So it can be really powerful. One interesting thing about lucid dreaming and interacting with the inner awareness, I'm reminded of a young guy who wrote me after my first book came out. And he said he was writing me as a former meth addict. And he was locked up for drug rehab. And he was so bored on the drug counselor's desk, he saw my first book and he began to read it because he was just bored out of his mind. And he got really interested in this idea of interacting with the inner awareness. So he started having lucid dreams and interacted with his inner awareness. And in one of the experiences, his inner awareness says, do you want to see what your life is going to be like if you continue to use drugs? And he said, sure, show me. He said for the next 10 minutes in the lucid dream, it was like a video of all the people he would hurt, all the damage he would do, all the trouble he'd cause for his self and his body. He said when he woke up from that lucid dream, he decided he was going to go cold turkey. And he was writing me after he finished his community college degree after 2 years, because he knew he'd have to be clean for 2 years in order to accomplish that. But again, just something like that, you can lie to your therapist, you can lie to your spouse or your partner, but when your inner awareness is giving you the lowdown, it's hard to sit there and say no, that's not me. It's much more powerful than waking interactions.
Wow, that's a cool story. I just love that the book was there. Like I a lot of synchronicities happen to it. Well, the more awareness you have in the waking state, the more you notice them anyway. Like they're happening probably to everybody anyway, but you've got your head down or you're on your phone or something, you're missing it. But those moments where it's like the song comes on and then you hear it here and then you see something else and everything starts to feel interconnected. And like Ramsey and I met we both ended up studying online. Awakened Mind is what we were studying, which we turned out to be mediumship, and that's how we got to know each other. But after we started studying the mediumship, like the dreams were really different around then as well. Like having dreams of somebody who's deceased that I didn't know when they were alive. I knew of them. I knew who they were married to, but I had never met that person. So that was really interesting, that as much as you can receive information if you're sitting as a medium with a sitter, how it could come through in the dream state. And I kept in the dream, I kept saying, go away, like trying to push this person out of my way. And then two people who know this person appear. And they keep pointing and telling me who he is. And I was like, oh, okay then. And when I went with him, like I flew to all sorts of places. He brought me to where he lived. Like it was really vivid and it was very lucid. And when I woke up, all of it was there. Like it wasn't fragmented. I was sitting there in meditation going, seriously, what am I supposed to do with all that now? So sometimes it's like, what are you supposed to do with information like that when it comes,
Right. I think one thing that dreaming and the lucid dreaming shows us, there's more than the waking self and the ego conscious self. There's just more going on. Mm-hmm. And we have much deeper lives than we would guess that we have. In my first book, I initially had a chapter on interacting with past life selves in lucid dreams. but my editor took it out because she said the book was getting too long and only 1 in 5 Americans believed in past lives. But I spent about 9 months where in every lucid dream, I tried to find out and engage a past life aspect. And so again, the potentials here are truly profound, but it shows us that there's much more to life and existence than just this waking life and surface physical reality.
Interesting. I have a question for you. We're almost, actually, we have 5 minutes before we go into to see what other things you have. You said there was a chapter missing. Did you publish it in your future books? Because it's kind of interesting topic, especially for me at least, to go back and see what other lives have encountered before coming here.
Right. I'm planning to write a third book, and I hope to have that chapter and expand on it there, because again, the depths of lucid dreaming are truly profound, but you won't be able to access them if you have fear or limiting beliefs. And as you begin to open up your mind more, then at least you have the initial capacity to explore.
Okay.
Do you think that
I just want to say is that I'll be waiting for your book.
Thanks.
But like, I know through, like, I teach meditation. I've been studying meditation. That's kind of how I ended up. I was at the Science and Consciousness conference in the UK, actually, and there was some dream experiments happening. And of course, then I started having dreams of Albert Einstein and stuff, and he would show up a lot in the dreams. And I was like, okay, rightio, what are we doing here? So I often find that whatever I'm doing in the way, especially if I'm at a retreat setting or kind of setting where I'm doing a lot of meditation, a lot of sitting or in nature, it definitely informs the dreaming and sleeping. So I suppose when we're much more intentional, we can seek an answer, or we can, ask those questions or whatever. But then you're kind of walking away from all of that, kind of going, now what do I do with all of that? It does change my perception of things, I think. But then unless you have someone like you to talk to about it, it just remains just something that happened while I was sleeping. You know what I mean?
Right. So one thing that came out of my first book, I shared how I over the previous 20 years, my first book came out around 2008 or so, but the previous years before then, I on occasion would have dreams about this Asian guy, and sometimes they were lucid dreams. I was lucidly aware, and he would share things with me, and as I was going deeper and deeper and exploring the nature of reality, he would show up and he'd go, "Oh, you did so great in last night's dream. Keep going for it." And I thought, who is this crazy Asian guy? Anyway, here was the strange thing that happened. When I typed up my book and sent it off to the proofreader and printer, I began to have our dreams every night of being given gifts. And the final dream of that sequence was this Asian guy putting an ancient Chinese necklace around ancient turquoise necklace around my neck. And the room exploded into purple light. In the morning, I wrote a friend of mine who's a Vedic astrologer, and he says, "Oh, Chinese Buddhist. Here's a link to a Chinese Buddhist." He sent me the link, and it was the guy who had done this. And he was teaching a workshop that I eventually went to. But again, sometimes you assume that these folks are archetypes of inner wisdom, or maybe they're past life helpers. But on occasion, you even have those bizarre experiences where someone who's been showing up intermittently in your dreams and lucid dreams actually exists in this physical realm and is supporting you. Like a teacher, they can't do the work for you, but they can encourage you, they can point the way, they can bring up the issues that you need to resolve to keep moving forward.
Would you say that was precognitive? So in that respect?
No, I think it was like almost pre-life planned, if you can imagine planning something. Okay. So That's how wild this whole area can be. It's totally a mind blower.
Wow. So where next, Robert? How can people get in? Like, we have your magazine, luciddreamingmagazine.com on the ticker tape below, and it's going to be in your bio underneath.
Yeah.
And we have your book. Sorry, Ramsey, you've put it up there as well. We have the book, and
that's the magazine. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
And so, how else can people get in touch with you? Are you doing any more workshops, or what's coming up next?
Right. I do online events. There's some that are already pre-recorded and people can go at their own pace. There was my books to read. And then sometimes I'll do 30-day online workshops where people can explore lucid dreaming. But I love hearing from lucid dreamers, and I love when they support our free online magazine, Lucid Dreaming Experience, by submitting their own lucid dreams or their own articles and all, because we're all our unique selves, and by seeing what people are doing, sometimes you might inspire or educate somebody else who's further on the path.
Cool. I definitely want to do one of those workshops. I will definitely, when I see it coming up, I will for sure sign up. I love this area. Robert, I'm so grateful for your time today. Such a pleasure to meet you and to hear your stories in person. I've loved your book. I highly recommend it to everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Susie.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to our listeners, and we'll see you next time. Have an awesome day.